Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into something that sounds almost too good to be true, and that is the economics of utility-scale battery energy storage systems during negative spot market prices. I mean, on paper, it's like the ultimate arbitrage dream, right? The market is literally paying you to consume power. It's often tossed around as this guaranteed slam-dunk win. But as we unpack the source material today, you're going to see that operating these massive multi-million-dollar storage assets, it's way more complicated than just flipping a switch when prices dip below zero. We're going to separate the casual assumptions from the harsh mathematical realities of the energy sector.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We're covering four main areas. First, we'll look at the arbitrage myth. Second, we'll tackle efficiency and grid constraints. Third, we get into the degradation dilemma. And finally, we'll wrap up with three strategic approaches.
All right, Section 1, the arbitrage myth. We're talking about the idea of printing money versus what you actually get in real net yields. To really get why there's such a huge disconnect here, we need to talk about peak renewable generation hours. You know those moments when the grid is just absolutely flooded with solar or wind power, and it slams into inflexible baseload generation. What happens? Wholesale electricity prices completely nosedive deep into negative territory. Now, to the casual observer, this literally looks like an infinite money glitch. The assumption is simply, hey, getting paid to charge the battery means you're basically printing money. Just soak up all that cheap power and watch the profits roll in, right? Well, not exactly. For the actual asset managers running these huge utility-scale systems, that rosy assumption crashes pretty violently into reality. It turns out, highly complex economics dictate the actual net yields. Your margin isn't just the simple math of the discharge price minus the charge price. It's actually heavily dictated by a ton of operational friction, tricky market structures, and the very real physical limits of the hardware itself.
Which brings us to Section 2, efficiency and grid constraints. These are the hidden tolls you have to pay.
So, the very first hidden toll on this arbitrage highway is round-trip efficiency loss. When you're dealing with a massive utility-scale battery, you are never, ever getting a perfect one-to-one transfer of energy. It's just physics. When you pull power from the grid, convert it, store it in those chemical cells, and then eventually pump it back out, you permanently lose a chunk of that energy to heat and auxiliary stuff like the HVAC systems keeping the battery cool. So the crucial point here is that even if the market operator is paying you, say $10 a megawatt hour to take that power, you're still fundamentally losing a cut of the physical volume. Think about it. If your system has an 85% round-trip efficiency, that 15% loss severely tightens your spread when you go to sell it back later. Your theoretical gross margin shrinks before you've even looked at external costs.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how these hidden costs stack up in the real world. Beyond those physical efficiency losses, you get slammed with systemic friction. First up, network tariffs. These are essentially a direct tax on your throughput, fees you pay just to use the grid infrastructure to move the power around. And they scale up the more you use them, eating right into your margin per megawatt hour. And it doesn't stop there. These batteries don't exist in a vacuum. Grid operator dispatch rules and curtailment constraints are strictly enforced. There are times when your optimization algorithm is screaming, charge the battery, prices are negative, but local grid congestion means the system operator forces you to curtail. Or maybe you're locked into providing ancillary services, like frequency response, which entirely stops you from chasing that negative spot price. When you combine efficiency losses, network tariffs, and grid constraints, those easy margins we talk about shrink exponentially.
And then we have to layer on the broader market environment, which is getting incredibly tough. We are fast approaching market saturation in a lot of these high-penetration renewable zones. Think about it. As gigawatts of new storage come online, literally everyone is chasing the exact same negative pricing events. This massive influx of batteries actively flattens the curve. It shrinks both how deep those negative prices go and how long they last. Because as soon as prices drop, every battery on the grid turns on to soak up the cheap solar, and the price corrects itself almost instantly. So, that basic passive baseline strategy of just charge when prices go negative, it completely fails now. It's simply no longer enough to guarantee a profitable business case. Asset managers are essentially being forced to hunt for much smarter, tighter optimization windows.
Moving right along to Section 3, the degradation dilemma, the high cost of high throughput. Okay, so beyond all the market fees and efficiency losses, chemical batteries pay a very strict physical tax. We call it cycle degradation. This is the literal wear and tear on the battery cells caused by high cycle throughput over time. Pumping huge volumes of energy in and out of lithium-ion cells actually alters their internal chemistry. It leads to things like microcracking and the buildup of the solid electrolyte interface layer. And I want to be clear here, this isn't just a routine maintenance headache, it is a hard financial reality. Every single time that asset is cycled aggressively to chase a negative spot price, its total energy capacity drops a little bit and its overall operational lifespan gets shorter.
So, here is the absolute core operational tension of energy storage. Capturing these ultra-low or negative prices fundamentally requires high cycle throughput. To make the arbitrage model actually work, to capture enough volume to make a profit on those razor-thin margins, you have to work the hardware incredibly hard. You might find yourself pushing the system to do multiple deep cycles in a single day. You're out there pushing manufacturer warranties to their absolute limits in a high-velocity, fast-paced trading environment.
And this leads us straight to a rather grim reality, which our source states perfectly. This aggressive pursuit of short-term negative price capture, quote, accelerates degradation and eats into long-term asset value. It's this high-stakes balancing act. Every megawatt-hour you capture today comes out a real fractional cost to that battery's ability to make money in year 5 or year 10. If you aren't accounting for the marginal cost of that degradation down to the exact cent, you might be looking at some amazing short-term cash flow, sure. But behind the scenes, you're quietly cannibalizing the hardware. You are literally trading away tomorrow's asset value just to capture today's spot market.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 4, 3 strategic approaches for maximizing true net yields. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what operators have to do to survive in such a saturated, high-friction market. They have to execute 3 specific strategies. First, round-trip efficiency absolutely has to be factored into the bidding curve. You can't just bid at 0 and expect to make money. The math just doesn't work. Second, you have to actively manage degradation trade-offs. This means dynamically calculating the real-time cost of cycling that battery against whatever revenue you'd make from the negative price event. If the cost of the wear and tear is more than the spread, you let the battery sit idle. And third, doing this kind of complex calculus requires deploying incredibly sophisticated optimization algorithms. Look, human traders using simple rule-based dispatch just cannot react fast enough to balance tariffs, state of charge limits, and complex degradation curves all at the exact same time. You need advanced stochastic modeling to optimize that dispatch in real time.
So, after unpacking the real gritty economics behind the negative spot market, we're left with a fantastic provocative challenge straight from the source material. And it goes like this. Asset managers, traders, and project developers, how are you factoring round-trip efficiency and degradation trade-offs into your bidding strategies during prolonged negative price events? I mean, that right there is the defining strategic question for this next era of energy storage. Because surviving in this space means leaving those simplistic dreams of easy arbitrage behind and rigorously managing these hidden tolls to protect your long-term value. Thanks so much for joining the Explainer today, and we'll catch you next time.